Hello and welcome to the Build a Soil FAQ. This is video number 7. Today we've selected a few questions that will allow me to share with you how I think about things, and in an effort to create independent gardeners that have a method for a construct for thinking out problems, this fits very well. So I'm going to go through, read off some of the questions. I'll answer to the best of my ability, just like always. And more importantly than just listening to these, if you have feedback for us, put it in here. On these FAQ, we get really good answers back or questions, things that I may have left out when I answered it. Oftentimes, I'll actually open up several more questions when I start to answer them. So please leave comments, interact with us. That'll make sure that we continue to have a lot of great content for these FAQ sections. All right, first question I'm pretty excited about. Jason asked about paramagnetic rock dust, and these relate back to keys about how we started sourcing product. And I like reverting back to all the knowledge that was built up over time, because oftentimes here at Build a Soil, we'll forget how far we've come, how much knowledge has been accrued, how many products that we've found out there to make a difference in gardening. And I want to make sure that we go back to all the fundamental basics on this YouTube series, especially when it comes to frequently asked questions. So with rock dust, I do have a video, a basic video that I've already done on the YouTube channel. Check it out. It's an old one. I think I'm recording it at my desk, and I talk about the differences in rock dust, and I'm pretty sure it'll be fairly similar to what I say today. But let's start at square one. If you're not familiar with what paramagnetic energy is, then I want you to look into Phil Callahan, and you'll find that there's like this Callahan meter, that there's information based on the energy that comes from the rock dust. There's a lot more to this subject than meets the eye, and that's part of why it can be lumped into the hippie science. But when you look at the science of it, there's some real information there. And we may not understand it all, but it can be harnessed. And so here's the thought. If I'm going to go look for a rock dust, it starts with a basic premise. The premise is this: all the best soil was built off of two basic modalities. One was volcanic explosion, putting rock dust everywhere, right? Magma, lava, and it's remineralizing the earth when that happens, creating a new era in the future that will have productive soil. The other way was massive movements of glaciers and moisture, carving out Grand Canyon, and then glaciers that were drug around the areas with all of these happenings. I don't know exactly how it works, but here in the area we're in, there was a lot more glacial movement. In fact, across the way, there's a gravel yard. They have a river, like an alluvial find, and they dig it all out, and they make gravel and rock dust and all sorts of stuff. In fact, the rock dust is like a byproduct. That one's decent. I've tested it, but when it comes to the fact that volcanoes typically do the best job at remineralizing, like Hawaii and Washington, all these areas that have had volcanic remineralization have really good soils. So the gardening movement was like, well, I don't want a volcano to go off here, wait another 100 years and then start gardening. So can I pretend that we did that? Is that what nature does? So they would go take rock dust from like a gravel yard, just like back here, and just spread it out. And they noticed that there was some benefit to it. It could have been structure in the soil, it could have been chemical, it could have been the energy in the rock. And so they started doing testing. In the beginnings of the rock dust movement, there's still this website, it's called, I think, remineralize.org. They were discussing all of these primers on rock dust and this information. And for a long time, they talked about glacial rock dust, and Gaia Green made it, and that was the go-to remineralization product. Since then, it seems like the community has shifted towards basalt. And Vanacore over at Rock Dust Local, we do some work with, we carry his basalt. He's really led the way on researching all these different materials, testing them at the lab, finding where to get them crushed, and knowing where they're at regionally close to you. So if you want to do some major remineralization, check out rockdustlocal.com. We carry some of their basalt, and we carry a local basalt because that's regional to us. The reason why we do basalt is the top layer from the volcanic flow that, in my opinion, it just creates beauty. Like the Grand Mesa here, it's a jungle of growth, and it's all built on basalt. Where if you look at where azomite is, it's like a desert, right? Nothing grows. I'm not saying that means that rock dust would be bad. It's just that I'm bringing you up to speed. So now, we've considered rock dust as good. We've considered volcanoes do a great job. So basalt is tapping into that and mimicking nature. Getting the finest gradient, the flour, allows us to get it more accessible. The basalt we get locally is a trail mix of chunks all the way down to fines. That's what I like to build soil with, so that there's some for now, some for later. And so now that we've agreed on that, When we look at all the rock dust, regardless of source, there's a way to measure their paramagnetic energy. That Phil Callahan meter is one of the ways to do that. And so if you look at a basalt flour from Rock Dust Local, it is significantly higher on those meters than other rock dust that might be available. And basalt is generally higher than most all others. It's magnets work on like iron, and so rocks are iron aluminosilicates, these rock dusts. So you could do a ton of research just on the keywords that I've given you. Phil Callahan, rock dust, paramagnetic energy. I want you to decide for yourself if this is something that's worth being like a must-have in your grow. Here's my thought. If we're making potting soil, we're trying to mimic nature, which means that nature has what? Compost, rock dust. That's basically what soil is. There's organic matter, there's rocks all ground up for eons. And so it would be foolish, I think, to make a soil without adding rock dust because we're trying to go away from hydro. So it fits. We need rock dust, it makes structure. So if we're going to pick one, why wouldn't we pick the one that has thousands of years of history, science that's unbelievable behind it, and potentially has this paramagnetic energy that might actually alter the energy around our plants and improve their growth. Now that last part about the paramagnetic energy actually helping, it may be a little bit of that hippie magic, but certainly how it builds the soil and helps isn't. When you look into some of these books, they encourage you to actually put a piece of basalt like these towers near your plant, do a test, see if that one's better than the others, and you can go do all your own experimentation. We're going to keep using basalt. I think it's super important, but I think this covers the way to research it on your own. Let us know here in the comments what you think about this stuff. I think we're going to get some interesting comments here. All right, let's go on to the next question. Take a sip here. Next question, FL Organic says, we would love to hear you describe the differences in terpenes between each pheno as they're getting later into flower in the 10x10 with smell descriptions for each one. Thanks for the awesome series. You're welcome. I want to do that. We're going to do one, I'm thinking later this week. So it'll be out next week where we actually walk through and do that. I'll pose a question to all of you right now. Should I just jump on the camera, walk around and say, this smells like this smells like this to me? Or should we maybe take close-ups, label them so you can look at what I'm looking at, and then with that, give my notes on each one or maybe record it on camera. And my thoughts are, I can just do it off the top of my dome, go smell it, and we can update that maybe closer to finish with a second one. Or maybe we fill out like a profile, like, was it sweet, was it skunky, was it this, was it that? And we could just answer all the questions for each strain as we go around the room. Put some feedback in here. I'd like to do this episode right for you. We're definitely give you some details on the odor. Let me know. We'll get that done in the next week. Hobby says, is it possible or viable to microdose? I already like this question. Yes, it's possible. Top feeding way more frequently, but at a considerable amount less. Yes, you totally can do that. Challenge is most of the time when we're talking about scale, that just means more labor. And so it may not be as advantageous. But when we talk about microdose feeding, if you do a soil test and you actually assess what you need based on your soil, you might be surprised how little you actually add once you have that data. Without that data, a lot of times we're left to fill the buffet, as I call it, add a little bit more than required. The only safe way, in my opinion, to add more is as a top dress in organic material that slowly breaks down. And then, of course, if we know our ingredients, we want to avoid things like sodium, chloride, bicarbonate in excess amounts because those can build up over time and cause more problems. So as far as microdose top feeding, it could be a labor issue. The only secondary thought I have is if you're coming in there every day and putting like a teaspoon, as opposed to at one time putting a cup, we may not, it biologically takes a little time to break down, and we may not be getting as much as we do doing more every couple weeks instead of less every day. But I think that you would have great success either way you do this, as long as you take a step to look at the plant, make sure that it's looking healthy and vibrant, and that it's not getting overfed or underfed in one area. You might want to consider what you're doing. But certainly if I come in and I'm behind it, I don't want to sit there and microdose. If I'm ahead of things, you absolutely can go take a little bit of scoop of this. There's another question coming up that'll allow me to get into some more detail. So I'll just finish this question with that. Yes, less is more. Less more often is much safer, and it's a great strategy. The only limiting factor is sometimes we're too busy, so we have to kind of guess, and it gives us more time. If you have the ability to go in there every day and just do small micro doses of top dressings, more power to you. You can grind them up even finer in a blender or whatever, and then there'll be more available. But we're trying not to get back to hydro, right? We're trying to trust the soil at a certain point, and so maybe that'll help you think about that. I'm just going to read this one instead of trying to skim through it, okay? So let me read it word for word. What is general advice you can give for feeding soil? What do we feed it? How often? for cannabis and normal vegetables and other garden systems using living soil. I feel like I'm missing something here. I got my soil together, I planted my cover crop, I planted my medicinal plants, but you're always adding this stuff to the soil for the cannabis, and I'm feeling confused on what and when to feed the soil. Perhaps you could shed some light. Thank you so much. Much love. This is a difficult question. I'm going to answer it to the best of my ability. Depends on how you grow, and so I'm running many different styles in the 10x10. If you've noticed, I've not added much to the 3x3. It's a lot of soil. I didn't do much to it. Now, the 10 gallons only had 7.5 gallons of soil, and I constantly added to it to make sure that I didn't get behind it. That's a consideration. It might be dependent upon your grow style. The next question is, I'd encourage you to read a few things that have helped us here. The Intelligent Gardener by Steve Solomon. He has a section. You can just Google this. You don't need to buy the book. He talks about designing a organic fertilizer and how he would do that. And one of the things that he mentions is that he would get a seed meal, he would get a phosphorus source and a calcium source, and he talks about having 2 or 3 calcium sources, like 1 or 2 phosphorus sources, and then some seed meal. And this is how you build a complete organic fertilizer known as a COF. So research that. It'll give you some insight into how he made his. Now, what we did is he may have recommended his 3-way lime, like lime, gypsum, oyster shell, something like that. And then he might have had like feather meal, cottonseed meal, soybean meal, calthos, rock phosphate. These are sometimes the same word or different words for the same product. But what we would do is say, well, feather meal we've known to come from GMO corn-fed farms that have the worst treated chickens. So I may not use feather meal, but what's a good nitrogen source? Seed meals. Seed meals are great nitrogen sources. So he talks about soy meal, cottonseed meal. Those are the 2 heaviest GMO pesticide-sprayed crops there are. So if you buy them in a non-organic source, you're sort of voting with your dollar to those industries, giving them money for their waste, and you're bringing with it potential for glyphosate and other things. Now, we may live in a dirty enough world where you can't get 100% away from it. But if you go to a certified organic, non-GMO soy, it's going to be better than going to a cotton. And if we're looking to replace feather, we could look at like fish meal. A little more expensive, so maybe not the same for acreage, but certainly at home we can do that. Fish meal is a great nitrogen source. The fish that's often used is cleaner in source than the feather meal that's man-altered. So the ocean may not be the most perfect place, but we still have documents and testing that shows us that certain ones are better than others. You say, hey, feather meal is fine with me. Then fine, that's a cheap form of nitrogen. We need nitrogen in our mix. For sure, in a potting soil, we need good phosphorus source, especially when flowering or doing annual flowering vegetables. And so we use calthos and fishbone meal. And so that's, if you look at our craft blend, you can see lots of diversity in seed meals, diversity in phosphorus sources. We went a step further and added some rock dust in there. And so that might be something to consider. But these are ways where you can keep the buffet full without overdoing it. The one caveat here is, let's say you've decided, I've learned I want seed meal and I want some fishbone meal because that'll give me calcium and phosphorus and then all the nitrogen and potassium from the seeds, and it's pretty well rounded. But the fishbone meal, if you just go hard on it, comes from the ocean, might have a little bit of excess sodium. So you keep pounding it time after time, and when you water living soil, it doesn't water to runoff. You might actually be building sodium up in there faster than your biology can deal with it. So when you start to learn things, you can understand where there's some areas you can go hard on and some you can't go so hard on, and that'll help. But eventually, soil testing really is very enlightening. So let's say once a year, once every 2 years, you just take a sample, send it off to the lab, and kind of see, is it building up in something or is it low in something? And that'll give you a great approach. And if you've already grabbed Steve Solomon's book, The Intelligent Gardener, you'll already know how to interpret the soil test. And if not, check out The Soil Doctor. Bryant Mason does a great job for a lot of our customers. We also have some internal things that you can do here at Build a Soil. It's just that you don't always have to use Build a Soil. There's lots of great resources for these things, and those will give you scientific answers. When we have that, we can really accurately apply what the plants need. If we don't have that, we're guessing, and guessing is fine if we have clean inputs and we have some base understanding of what creates balance. So reading up on the complete organic fertilizer will give you that. And then when you start using it, even if you use it over and over and over again, eventually you're gonna have to use your eyes and ask the plant, is this getting worse or better over time? And if it's starting to get out of your control, it might be time for a soil test. But when you get experienced at this, a lot of times you'll just be like, oh, look, I'm just gonna do a gypsum flush real quick. I'm gonna top dress and we're back in action. GLP, Nevada, the guys got like 25, 26 cycles back to back in the same place. They've used a lot of data to keep that right, but they also haven't done anything crazy over there. So this is all doable. And I will say that if you need a soil test because you just don't know what you're looking for, do it more often. Once you gain a base of understanding from those soil tests, you've seen what your soil's done over a certain period of time, it gives you a lot more comfort in just winging it, if that makes sense. But if you don't know what you don't know and you're winging it, follow best practices, and that's less is more, right? And then more soil is better because now you can feed less, and that's the best end of the less is more. More soil, less feeding. It's confusing, but that's what it is. That's the build a soil way. Make the things that are harder take over by nature. So big soil means that wider margin of error. They don't have to be quite as good. If I have a little beer cup, I better have a good lab because I'm back to hydroponics pretty much. So there you go. That's one answer for how to think about this stuff. Another way to look at it is if you're buying like a liquid fertilizer, liquid fish is pretty all purpose. Our craft blend, pretty all purpose. If you start buying stuff that's like 0-20-0, very specific. So you have to know that you need that. That's one way to consider it. And I really think the only downside of using general things instead of specifics is that you might build up some sodium. You may not know what you don't know, but if you get good ingredients, you follow these basics, you really can just keep adding to it as long as you don't do too much. And it's not like we're going to be measuring it out to the gram on yield for your personal grow. The goal is to have more weed than you need, and so it's not really an issue if you're dialed into perfection because you live a life. I encourage you to get really serious about it if you want to, but that means soil testing. And if all you're worried about is things being like on an even keel, I think following the Build a Soil way will keep you right in that guideline. So Jason says, have you given any thoughts on doing like, say, an East Coast distribution company? For your soil, the price isn't bad, but adding shipping and it's out of my range. As always, great videos, keep them coming. First off, thank you. Second, I wanna make sure that you can make this on your own, don't need Build a Soil, even if we closed. Third from that, I know it's a lot of work and we wanna get to the East Coast. So we realize there's demand, we're trying to get there. Two challenges. One, we're a customer first, quality first company. That leads to back orders, delays. I say no to products. I won't buy them. We test them. I'm my own worst enemy when it comes to that, and we've grown faster than I think our capabilities. When we get to that point, that'll allow us to actually push soil of the quality that we want to an East Coast distribution center, knowing what inventory is there, knowing when the trucks are coming, and be able to send it to you. We have a new building that we just built. We're running double shifts in it, and if we get an incoming supply issue, it just cripples us. And so we're to the point where we're testing more suppliers, we're getting more data in here so we can be quality first and still have options to be able to move at the speed necessary. But I don't want you to think we're just like, we're just chilling over here like East Coast can deal with it and pay high shipping. We know about it. So let me share with you a couple things. East Coast customers, we are sending product out there. There are some wholesale suppliers out there. Go talk to them. So go to buildasoil.com, go to the store locator on the top, find the ones that are nearest to you. And if you don't see one near you, go tell your shop to order with us. We might be slightly behind, meaning it may take a few weeks for them to get their first order. But once they're in, they're part of the system. So that's one way. Second way, order a 60-bag pallet. It has free freight. If you don't want all 60 bags, order it with 2 people. That's 30 bags each. 3 people, that's 20 bags each. If you can't use 20 bags, then you're gonna have to just pay the freight on 1 or 2 boxes or go to the local store. But to ease the pain, that's a great way our customers have done it. 3 or 4 people go in on a pallet, it goes to one of their houses. Worst case, they end up selling a bag or 2. Like, put on Craigslist. I don't care. I just want you to have the good shit. I want you to have soil that you like. And then short of that, we're teaching you recipes too. So you can do this. And I know on the East Coast, Coast of Maine, lobster compost is one of those that has a good recognition and always has. Even on the forums before Build a Soil was around, it was like, go find Malibu, look at Oldie Mountain, find Coast of Maine. And those big names still remain true to this day. So look at Coast of Maine if you're on the East Coast. Check out our Build a Soil distributor lines or maybe buy a full pallet with free freight. On that note, if you've been looking for us to get not just East Coast distribution, but some distribution closer to you so you don't have to pay the freight. Like, it's a problem. We make soil that weighs like 40 pounds a bag. We did it backwards. We did not make it to be full of perlite with the lightest amount of cocoa and peat moss just to ship it the lightest weight per square inch of highest margin. We just weren't into those metrics. It was like, make the best soil. That's all we cared about. And now backing into trying to build a business out of it, it's a challenge. So here's how you can help. Go to your local store anywhere. If you don't have it near you, you can't find it on their Build a Soil store locator, and tell them, talk to a manager, walk in there and ask, hey, I'd love it if you bought Build a Soil products. I would show up here and buy them. In fact, while I'm here buying some Build a Soil products, I might buy a measuring glass and a thermometer and other stuff I would have gone to Amazon for, and that'll keep more local business happening. So do that. Go ask them. It'll help us a lot. Last question here. So this question comes from David, and I think I already addressed some of this question earlier. So this will be good, I'll just revisit it. David says, if I top dress with Craft Blend to add back any depleted nutrition in a no-till raised bed, it would be adding everything back. even the nutrition that is not yet depleted. So to clarify, he's saying, let's say I had 100% of all my nutrients, and let's just say there's 3, right? There's a million. Let's say there's nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, okay, NPK. If I had 100% each and my plant starts to deplete them to a lower level, it's not going to be even across the board. So if I go add craft blend back, I might be elevating one to 110%, one might only come back to 80%, and another one at 90%. How do I make sure that I'm keeping some sort of balance when all I'm doing is adding craft blend back, okay? So it would eventually become unbalanced, correct? In the short term, it will give the plants the nutrition that they need. But will the unbalance cause any issues over time? How often would I need to test the soil and balance it back out? The short answer is using less and doing it in a normal amount should keep you fairly balanced for the long term. The challenge is if you really do care about this, soil testing is the best answer. And if you were to test every round, like let's say every single round was so important, you had to maximize the potential no matter what, to the nth degree, and all you were going to do is focus on this like it was your sole job. Absolutely. Test in the beginning, test halfway through, test at the end, test the tissue of the plants. Let's alter the inputs for it. You can really start to steer these plants and nail it. The problem is it's like the Olympics, right? To get to the Olympics, let's say we're talking about a track meet, and you have 10 people on there and they go race. The guy that won the gold medal might be 0.02 seconds ahead of the guy that worked his entire life for 5th place, and might only be 0.4 seconds or something ahead of 1,000 other people who worked in their entire life to get there and still didn't make it. But it doesn't take all that work to get 99% of where they're at. It's that last 1% that is like the best of the best of the best. And so using craft blend, using good compost, using more soil volumes, reading your plant's health, that'll take you like 90% of the way there. That last 10%, if you really want to get down to it, do a soil test, do it often. I'd say the average gardener, let's say you're doing a once a year outdoor grow, test in the beginning of the season, stack yourself up for success, have a few products to feed and stuff in case it gets crazy. And then at the end of the season, mulch it up, tend to everything, and then let's do another soil test in the next year and just do it once a year. That's more than enough. Like I said, though, you can geek out. You can do like a soil test every 2 weeks, document it. You can do tissue testing against that. It really does get weird. So rest assured, if you can, use your eyes, look at the plant, know that it's got some turgor, it's not getting weird growth issues on the leaf, then you can keep doing what you're doing. And most likely it's working really well. Some genetics, though, I'll tell you, they're very finicky and they will require a lot more attention to detail. Other plants don't care. You could have ingredients half off, half this, half that, they'll crush. And so at a certain point, every detail does matter, but like 90% of this doesn't matter when you're following really good basic fundamentals. So take it for what it's worth. Do as much soil testing as you like. Here's what I found. People that really geek out do a lot of soil testing when it's just their home grow. They do it for a short period of time, find out some great info, and then just kind of follow within those parameters in their mind. They go, okay, well, it took me 2 years to build up on sodium. My water's pretty clean. I've isolated any issues that could surprise me, and they just rock it. Maybe they'll test it every couple of years. But that's what it's going to take. If you're brand new, you just don't know what you're doing, and you really want to have good results, there's other things besides the soil testing that are going to be in the way. The room environment, the grow lights, the structure of the plant, the timing of all these things, over and under watering. Because how can I be sure it's really my soil if I'm overwatering every time, right? So get all those practices right. Start doing some soil testing. Bryant Mason, the soil doctor, he's got a good program. It's pretty expensive, but if you're really asking these questions, you might be the type that wants to take it. We bought it. I love it. It's helped us here. So that's another good option for you. I hope that helps answer these questions. I'm trying to pick some that aren't straightforward and easy for us to answer. Like when we look at questions, it's very easy to just kind of cherry pick, the yes or no questions or the one sentence questions, because it's very safe for me. It keeps me in an area where everybody can go, oh yeah, that's the answer, right? That's what we're looking for. But when I have to get into nuances where it's kind of personal opinion or the build a soil way, I'm starting to share things that's about how we think, and not everybody's going to agree with it. Totally fine with that. We're just trying to share what we think. Go listen to 100 other people, make up your own style. We've done that. This is what we ended up on. And I think that you'll find it's really productive for a busy lifestyle from an organic-minded perspective. And we're going to keep doing what we do. Ask us questions like these. We're going to go deeper down the rabbit hole as we get into these FAQs and keep stacking them. This is what, number 7, I think, right now. When we're on number 700, we're going to have all these questions answered to the point where we might revisit them with new science, more understanding, and future technical skill. And I can't wait for that day. So keep posting the questions, answer other people's questions in here. I love when I see conversations going. But more importantly, if I was jumping around too much on one of these questions and you need something specific, ask me. Maybe I have it there. Maybe I can help. So thanks again. It's been a great FAQ. I really appreciate everybody actually typing these out. There's some thought out longer questions on here, and we're just going to keep doing it. I'll see you on the next episode.